It actually did really hurt my feelings.
नहीं बैठ के
Parents were like, bus. My name is Sabah Bano. I am I guess you could say content creator mostly now, but I'm also a radio show host here on City FM 89 for the last 5.5 years. I've been a journalist nearly 10 years. And yeah, what I'm probably most well known for, I say, is like a person on the internet. So jo bhi ho raha hai, kuch bhi ho raha hai, I'm doing it.
And you're also known as someone who talks about important topics that are happening in our society.
I famously have never had a rishta.
ठीक है.
Huh. And like, I know you're looking at me so, oh, she's like 16. No, I'm 35. And I've lived in Pakistan now almost 11. I think actually I just crossed 11 years yesterday. Wow, I should message my family. We just crossed 11 years. And like famously, like in a lot of my comedy, I talk about it, that rishta kabhi nahi aaya. It's not entirely true. One time a rishta came, we talked for like, an hour on the phone, and then a week later, I get a message of, let's just be friends. And I was like, bhai, I literally don't know you. Dosti hum chhodte hain, shaadi bhi chhodte hain. So that was like, so my relationship is that, being a certain size, a certain color, a certain type of woman, if you will, I was a bit excluded from the traditional rishta culture. I wasn't seen as, the mainstream sort of pick. He excluded me. In fact, I once blatantly asked this rishta auntie, I was like, Sune, like, what is, like, be honest with me, why haven't you ever looked for me? And she said, like, oh, like, you're too fat, you're too dark, like, it would be hurtful to me that people wouldn't pick you, so I just don't bring you up. And, in the moment I had to be like, oh, I don't care. But honestly, it actually did really hurt my feelings. As much as I criticize the rishta culture, that doesn't mean I don't want to be included. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So yeah. And then I think could say also, I do think I'm a product of like times are kind of obviously changing. Times have changed. I have an elder sister, and actually watching her experience through the rishta process, honestly, was quite traumatizing for my family. Like my parents were like, bus after a while, though. They didn't want to put up with
Why?
it.
Why were like bus? क्या था ऐसा?
Their thing was that, you're inviting people over to your home in good faith, and they come inside and aapki beti ko dekh ke, they're criticizing and they're, judging.
Wahi
and
baith ke.
Wahi baith ke. We actually once had an incident where someone walked in and walked right out. Just like, it was so rude. It was so, we all started laughing. I'm not going to lie. But imagine. And wo bhi that quite often, I know we have a culture where parents and family is involved, but so often, women from a man's family will come to your house and observe you, and you may never ever meet that man prior to this, with your family. I think we sort of had a romanticized version of it that, two genuinely like interested parties, you come together, you're sitting with families, maybe you're, getting to know each other in a way that people are comfortable, right? And then you see where it progresses. So I think our opinion of it was a little more butterflies and hearts.
And the reality was different.
The reality was a bit, whoa.
Concern is कि लोग मुझ पे शादियां कर लेते हैं, लेकिन क्योंकि सोसाइटी ने इसको इतना बुरा बनाया हुआ है कि लोग डरते हैं कि हम desperate लगेंगे या लोग awkward होते हैं, even if they are on Muzz, even there are singles who want to get married, लेकिन उनको होता है कि लोगों को पता ना चले कि हमने मुझसे प्रोफाइल बनाई है.
Yeah.
तो इस चीज के बारे में what are your thoughts?
Well, I think before we even look at marriage app pe maine account bana diya, this and that, I think in general we really don't like being seen as trying. Like nobody wants to be a try hard. Nobody wants to be seen as earnestly putting their foot forward, right? I don't know whether it's like fear of failure, fear of perception. Obviously, log kya kahenge, our number one tenet as a country. Har cheez mein yehi hota hai ki log kya kahenge. I first think that's an issue. Before anything else, is that the vulnerability of putting yourself out there for people to judge you. Now you add on this thing of that you're actively looking for someone. And I particularly think for women, it's unfair, but I think it holds some shame that, a good woman doesn't look for someone herself or doesn't actively pursue marriage herself. And honestly, there is nothing against this, like anywhere in our texts and the way we are brought up, but culturally, it is deemed, on one hand, we are shadi obsessed culture. On the other hand, if you too want that shadi somehow, you are in the wrong. You know, marzi is important. Consent from the bride and the groom act, both of them. Trust me, it's not easy, and this is coming from me of all people, but it's not that easy for young men either in our country, because the idea of exercising your choice is seen as disrespectful, like to your families, and even if everything else is right, simply the fact that aapne apni choice la diya, right? They're upset with you. So I think when, like on Muzz, I can imagine that people are feeling a little nervous that if people see me, if people know me, what does this mean? Like, will people judge me? What if I see someone on there who knows me? You know what I mean? Although for me, I feel like that's kind of a nice scenario. You know, you might be in the pond you're in. Then when you add the fact that your parents might be like, "Jab hum rishta laate the," critical decisions you will make in your life is who you build a life with, obviously, right? Very important. And I do feel in Pakistan at times we're a bit flippant about it. That, you know, bas karna hai to kar lo, and age ho gayi hai, and we've selected and we've picked, and like,
societal pressure.
It's a lot of societal pressure. I mean, I remember when we moved to Pakistan, my sister was 26. I was 24. They ignored me, but she was 26, and there was so much like hullabaloo, that 26 ki bachi and she has to get married and da-da-da. And my parents didn't feel that way. They were being told by everyone else, so they were like, chalo, maybe we missed something and we need to get on this, because
I think as a society हम इस decision को बहुत light लेते हैं, क्योंकि ये एक ऐसा decision है जो कि आपका life की बाकी सारे decisions और पूरी journey पे impact करता है. If you have a partner who you like, who has the same values, who has the same morals, principles, तो आपकी आगे, if you have kids, वो भी चीजें similar होती हैं. फिर आगे हर decision, one more important thing, आपकी जिंदगी में इस aspect से अगर peace आ जाए, तो आपकी जिंदगी actually peaceful गुजरती है. जिनके partners अपनी पसंद के नहीं होते, उनकी जिंदगी से peace चला जाता है, गायब हो जाता है.
Absolutely. And I think like the most foundational baseline cheese that is it important for your daughter to have a husband and your son to have a wife, or is it important that they have marriages and they have partnerships in these marriages and friendships in these marriages? And I think unfortunately हमारे रिश्ता culture में we just stop it. शौहर हो गया, बीवी हो गई, we're good. Yeah, घर complete हो gaya. And it's like, but they hate each other. Or, you know, let's say they don't even hate each other, but they don't make each other laugh.
Yeah.
You know, they don't challenge one another. They don't learn with one another. Sometimes, you know, people will be like, life is short. I actually feel like life is long. I mean, if inshallah, it's long. So it's like, why not spend it like the best possible ways you can, right? Not sitting there looking at someone and wondering, why are we in this kitchen together? And I hate you.
Why is she in my life?
Why is she in my life? Why is he in my life? Like, we have nothing in common, you know?
और फिर वो life के 5 या 10 साल गुजारने के बाद it actually hits you that this is not the choice that I made myself.
Yeah.
And it was a choice of my parents probably, or मेरी ताई या चाची या फूफी.
They equate wealth with morality. That if you have wealth, then you must be a good person. Or why would that be happening to you? And I'm like, corruption? I don't know, like illegal practices, you know. Haram ka paisa bhi kuch ek cheez hoti hai. So, but it's interesting. We usually look at wealth as some sort of signifier of goodness. But have we learned nothing?
We have learned nothing. और उसी की basis पे families को भी judge किया जाता है कि अगर इनकी family यहाँ रहती है तो हाँ अच्छा रिश्ता होगा. लेकिन अगर इनकी family कहीं और रहती है जो कि इतनी famous जगह नहीं है तो वो अच्छा रिश्ता नहीं है.
Yeah.
और फिर उसी के बेसिस पे रिश्ता आंटीज पे रिश्ता लेके आती हैं and then रिश्ते बिकते हैं इसी के बेसिस पे कि अगर डिफेंस का रिश्ता चाहिए तो 5 लाख का भी मिलेगा आपको. और अगर आप
You're joking.
I'm serious.
This I didn't know.
That happens.
You can sell rishta.
That happens. कल्चर में कि जब ऑपोजिट अगर रिवर्स कर दिया जाए रोल और लड़के पे प्रेशर हो, लड़के ने अपने पेरेंट्स को मनाना हो, तो लड़के से बहुत लोग कहते हैं कि तुम में मर्दानगी ही नहीं है, तुम मना नहीं सकते अपने पेरेंट्स को. लेकिन अगर ऑपोजिट हो जाए तो लड़कियों कहते हैं खैर है जाने दो, अपने अम्मी अब्बू की सुन लो. लड़कियों को नहीं कहते कि अपनी तुम मना नहीं सकती अपने पेरेंट्स को.
Unless you're friends with me, in which case I 100% will be like, hey, if you're ready to get married, you're ready to stand up for yourself. If you're not, then you're
Yes.
not ready to get
Yes.
married. You know, you're encouraged to build a home together because I also think a lot of times our culture sort of villainizes the husband and wife relationship if they're getting along. It's very weird. We want our children to get married, but then if they're happy, we're like, "Kya ho raha hai?" Like, and it's
Kahan ja rahe ho?
strange. "Kya ja rahe ho? Kyun khush ho rahi hai?" Like, why are you happy? So the logic behind having your own living quarters or at least enough space that you have privacy is so that you can build a life together because you weren't dating before, right? Like you got married, you're building a life. What do I think? Now listen, I'm single at 35. You never know. A stone gets thrown at me, I might catch it and say, let's call it a day. But personally, I wouldn't want that option. But then I think it really depends. I understand why we do it. I understand that there's a cultural aspect to it. But truthfully, I don't think, I make many jokes where I'm like, I don't think I want to move into your dad's house. I got to be honest with you. And trust me, you don't want to move into my dad's house at all. I don't know. I think it's a lot of issues.
I think when a couple gets married, if the guy can afford to live in a separate home, or both of them are working and they can afford to live in a separate home, they should definitely live in a separate home.
Yeah.
But let's assume the guy is in his struggling phase and the girl comes in and she has been living like a princess at her dad's place, and then she forces the guy कि मुझे अलग घर लेके दो क्योंकि मुझे आदत नहीं है लोगों के साथ रहने की. तो उस बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है?
I mean, again, I feel like this falls under the umbrella of not taking shadi seriously enough. If you're about to literally sign a nikah